specifically for us on relatively short notice. In the way of background, first off, Harvey has got a huge number of slides, and I don't want to give a long introduction because we want him to focus on his presentation. But Harvey's been growing orchids for 60 years. And for a man who's 62 years old, I think that's a pretty amazing accomplishment. He has 11 AOS quality awards. He's given talks to something like 8 or 9 orchid societies around the country. And he was also spent 2 years as the librarian in Rancho Santa Ana Botanical Garden in Claremont. And I lived about a mile away from the Botanical Garden, and it was one of my favorite spots to hit. So Harvey's got an interesting botanical background, and being a retired librarian, he does, as Jeff mentioned, talk in hushed tones. So I think it's a professional attribute, and he chose his profession well. So without further ado, and without me trying to mispronounce your last name, Harvey, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
No.
Yes, we can.
It's pronounced Brenneise. And yes, it's an honor to be here. I often attend your meetings and appreciate the fact that you keep them open. And so this is a way of paying back, partly. Okay, let me see if I can figure out how to get. Now, I haven't tried all of these methods myself. I have documented a number of methods for growing without bark. I think growing isn't that old a technique. I believe it was largely promoted by Rob McClellan Company in South San Francisco, starting in the 40s or 50s. Fred does a great job of growing that way and explains it well, and I don't want to disparage him in any way, although he did say a few things that I don't agree with, which you will see. Let me see how I move this slide forward. Spacebar. It isn't going to go. Well, I guess I'll use the mouse seems to work. Focus on the roots. I always tell new growers, most orchids that get killed or die do so because the roots have been killed. And they forget that these are epiphytes, and they really do need air. And so frequently we get the air-water ratio wrong, and then they die because there's more water and no air. So that is something I always tell beginning growers too, is make sure you get adequate air at the roots. In fact, they don't grow in pots in nature, do they? They grow in a humid environment and get rained on, and then they dry out. Now, Fred thinks the drying out is what's important. Ray Barkalow and I think that it's really the access to air that's important. Obviously, both things happen at the same time. And the air-water balance will not be the same for all genera. So you have to watch what you're doing, and it will not be the same everywhere. I was talking to a woman on Facebook this week, actually, about her cattleyas, and I was explaining how I did it, and she says that would be dry in a day in southern Arizona. So adjustments do have to be made. Up here in the Northwest, we have a lot of ambient humidity all the time. You probably do if you live near the coast down there. But the healthy roots are very important, especially the velamen is the white part that turns green. That is, if that's kept healthy by maintaining this ratio. The container also impacts. A lot of times we orchid growers forget that what we're really doing is creating an ecosystem around the roots. And that's influenced by the medium and the container and the ambient humidity. And all three are where you grow is the important thing to remember. There are many ways to achieve the balance in organic and inorganic. Of course, the organic are constantly breaking down, and eventually the ratio gets to be too much water, basically. Some are lithophytic in nature. Most are just epiphytes that grow on other natural trees and whatnot. But they do not grow in pots naturally. So we're doing that for us. I think sometimes we use the word container, assuming that we're containing the plant. We're really, which is what they have in nature. And the closer we can come to a perch, I think the better we are. People grow, of course, mounted. My internet connection is unstable. I hope it's not unstable on your. They will actually drown if there's too much water in their water ratio. And as I said, the container and the medium, along with the ambient humidity, are all important to balance. Now, a lot of times we forget about the pot or the container, if we want to call it that, because some pots breathe and some don't. And the plastic ones, the plain plastic ones, don't breathe at all. Clay pots, some of us have used the traditional pots, they breathe. More air gets in. Net pots even more than that, or baskets, as we'll see later in the program. And we can use other things in our media that can make it a little wetter. Rock wool and moss are two of those things. Obviously, moss is organic and rock wool is not. So if you want to be completely inorganic, you'd go with rock wool. But if your plant if you're not getting the balance correct, then maybe adding some rock wool if it's too dry. As orchid roots grow, they tailor themselves at the cellular level to the medium in which they are growing. And then it's very difficult to change the environment, and they often will die when we do that. So the best time to repot is to let them or into the container, whatever we're using, just as they emerge. This is here to be doing that for many genera, because I see lots of nice green root tips happening. Now, some of the variations I'll talk about are semi-hydroponic, which is Ray Barcolow's invention, full water, semi-water, LECA, lightweight expanded clay aggregate in a basket with no water, ground up tires. I haven't tried that, but I have pictures. And then mixtures of LECA and small cubes of rock wool. So you get to decide what works for you in your environment. Semi-hydro or just SH? Oh, I see how this is going to work. Semi-hydro basically always, and it has, the hydroponic system has circulating water with pump. And hydroponic does not, it's just static. It has water at the bottom of your container that can be drawn up by the roots. And it's better than hydroponics in any way. You don't share bad things. Now, Fred, I know, advocates medium drought between it for many genera is true. However, what you're really doing when you're drying out is that you're letting air into the mix, because fully wet, there isn't much air down in there because the water is filling. And so we have some examples here. It is basically a lithophytic because it uses LECA, lightweight expanded clay aggregate, and has a constant water supply. And here we have an example of a plant that's growing fruits. It looks like it's something on the Ancinae alliance. It's not my plant, I don't think, although the pot looks familiar, but the background doesn't, so it must not be mine. The medium is inert and it can be reused. However, you do have to watch salt buildup. So be careful with how much fertilizer you use and always flush very well between fertilizing sessions because you can get salt built up in there, especially if you're reusing it. It's not expensive, but you're not throwing anything away either. And when do you repot? Basically, when it completely outgrows the container or even breaks the roots, break the container, which many can do. You don't really have to disturb the roots when you're putting it in here or transferring from one container to another, because the medium just stays attached to the roots. You don't have to throw it away. You don't have to pry it off. It also, semi-hydroponic, gives you a constant nutrient supply because there's always some nutrient in the water in the bottom. And except for the very top layer, the moisture is pretty evenly distributed. It can be an issue in the top layer because that's drying out with the air. And theoretically, anyway, once the plant is established with roots like this one, you can't overwater because you planted it correctly. And one of the key questions correctly in semi-hydroponic is actually having very clean leca. You have to sieve it out and get rid of all the fine stuff because basically it puts stuff in there. Containers look like this. You buy containers or whatever, and then you just drill or melt hole bottoms, a couple of holes near the gray has a hole with quarter-inch hole. More can be added if you want. So the ones I usually have 8 or 10 more holes further up. Lots of variables. What you can use as a container, however, there is one I've used, which I will not use, and that is cottage cheese and other dairy containers from the store. They will not hold up to the sun. They will break and crumble. These others, the deli containers, seem to do fine. Okay, we talked about leca a little bit. It comes various brands. That's what it is. It is inert. It's fairly light, fairly uniform size, but definitely sieve it out. Do not use it straight out of the bag. Actually, if you get it in a bag, you should also soak it for a few days and run lots of fresh water through it. Has good capillary action, lots of air movement and gas exchange. The salt buildup you do have to watch. And here we kind of get into the issue of the purity of your water. And I think actually for all orchid growing, that's important. Now I'm spoiled, I live near this river, which is all snow and ice, melt and rain. And it's the purest water I've ever gotten out of the tap. The last place I lived, we had to have reverse osmosis because it came out of the ground and it couple hundred parts per million of total dissolved solids. And then you're going to add fertilizer to that. Too much salt. And that's what it looks like. Hydroton is the one I use mostly. It's fairly widely available. And there are other brands. Somebody gave me some of this Odla, so I don't know, I'll use it. I don't think I'll go to IKEA to buy it. And ceramics. So you have a number of products out there that will work with this. I wouldn't use the perlite because perlite just breaks down too much. It doesn't stay stable. The rock will stay stable. And so I've listed a number of other options that people have used. I don't know whether you can mix it or not. I probably should have taken that question out because I don't know the answer to it. But various kinds of rock can also be used depending on the rest of your environment. There's what the bag of hydroton looks like, and then the diatomaceous earth. See, I'm a little suspicious. I haven't used, that's not my picture of the DE. I don't like the variation in size because I think that allows for probably not enough water. But again, you can see even marbles can be used. And here are kind of some directions, and that's why one reason I'm giving the link to this, because I'm not going to read through all of this, but the directions will be there if you want to follow them or go to Ray's site, first Ray's Orchids. You don't want to put roots all the way down into the water with semi-hydroponic. They will grow there on their own. And this is just some showing how various pots, a couple of these are mine, showing the new root growth. So the Cattleya on the left probably, well, obviously it had been repotted already. Be getting a little late for repotting, but you can kind of see the roots go down through there, and they do stay. They have some wetness most of the time, so the development stays green. So you don't have to dry it out in between as long as you're getting enough air to the roots. And this is another little trick, and I don't know if this is mine or whose it is. You first plant it in a plastic basket, and then you put the whole basket into another semi-hydro pot, which allows for air to be all around this whole basket. And you can see that plant is very happy with that and grows through the basket and grows down into the reservoir, which this down here is the water and the hydroton probably. And here we have a frag. You can see it's very happy with, and frags are one of the easiest genera to grow in this way because they're naturally, Miltoniopsis is another one. They naturally like a lot of water. But water quality is important. And when you do water, lots of water, because the water is also bringing the air to the roots. And that's true actually in the way Fred grows too, is when you water it, not only is there air already down there, there's more air that the water is bringing in. Frequency varies a lot. Depends, down there in southern Arizona, it might be every few days. Or in the summer, our weather conditions here in the Northwest on the coast are so different than summer and winter, and it varies a lot. You just have to watch the plant and see what the plant is telling you. But one advantage to this over some of the bark mixes is that you can water the whole collection at once. You don't have to go through and say, well, this one's dry and this one's still wet, and water them individually. So lots of water, can't be too much when you water, just water a lot. Try to water it before the reservoir goes dry, because then all the roots will start drying out. Now, a lot of orchids are tolerant of some drying out at the roots, mainly because they're epiphytes, and that's what happens in nature. Fertilizer, a lot of people will go one extreme or the other. I have a friend in Indiana that never fertilizes at all, and she grows under lights in the basement, and she has some of the nicest orchids I've ever seen. Other people fertilize quite a lot. Basically, you're looking at 100 parts per million of nitrogen per week, which is somewhere between a 1/6 and a 1/4 teaspoon per gallon. So these aren't petunias or something else that wants a lot of water. And there's so many variations, I can't address all of them in a meeting this many slides, this larger presentation. But Ray he is a scientist, he does study this stuff, and I do like his products. He's not paying me. and actually basically no fertilizer in the middle of the winter. You probably don't need it. Hamsane and Imbolc are actually the two Celtic holidays we call Halloween and Groundhog Day, but they're halfway between this winter solstice and either the equinox in the spring or in the fall. And that time orchids don't really grow that much, so you don't that much. But then if you're closer to the equator, maybe it doesn't matter because you don't get a lot of difference between daylight. So north, we're at 48 degrees north. We're closer to the equator where I grow. So, I have to go differently. New roots will adapt to the environment to some degree, but then they don't. So if you stay in this, and that's some kind of a path, it's like. It's not my picture, so. And the frags love it because they like the water. Okay, these are directions for how to do it, how you prepare the media and the pots. And these are actually raised directions. And this is kind of a step-by-step. It's a little bit much for a program that's got this much capacity in it, or so much to cover, so much material to cover. That one looks like it has pretty good roots. Basically, you're getting rid of all the organic material and getting it ready to put in pretty standard repotting stuff here. Put some medium in the bottom and then put the plant in and pour around it, making sure to put it at the correct depth, basically where the roots are just starting. You will find it easy, I'm sure, after you've done it a few times. Put the tag back in, that always helps. Now the top layer is in because it is exposed to the air and dries out. So I will sometimes just layer organic sphagnum moss or something to kind of keep the top evaporation down. Some other ideas which I've included in here where you can actually a cap on the top. Then reduce the stress, pretty standard, humid, shaded, warm, where the roots like to grow. And this must be Canadian or British slides because it shows the stages of adaptation as they happen. Probably, it looks like it must be Australian. Angraecums don't like to be repotted, but they do seem to do okay in this. And the first time I've gotten my Angraecum sesquipedale to bloom actually has been in this medium. I've never had it bloom before. The catasetums will also grow well in it. Of course, you have to be able to honor their dormancy needs and follow the pretty standard process of completely dry for 3 or 4 months, which you can do. You just let it dry out. Here's the pot that I don't recommend. Cattleyas do great in it. As long as there's root growth that you can move the plant into this material. And they don't mind drying out either, particularly. And here's somebody that cat grown in pumice. I haven't tried this, but dendrobiums, they do actually quite well with it. Just don't repot in the fall, which was the mistake I made. Repot spring because they're going to grow all summer, and then especially the nollies have to have fall cooling off, less water, less fertilizer, like to be root bound. Actually, some people have a real thing about letting their orchids root bound. As long as it's not breaking the pot, or even after it has, I don't think most orchids don't really seem to mind being root bound. Now, very few people here in the Northwest grow cymbidiums because they don't have any way to water them. You have lots of cymbidiums down there in the Santa Barbara area, and they really grow well in there. Just stick the plant outside, water it once or twice, good to go. That's doing really well as well. Best time to pot is when the new growth starts. You have to be careful to watch how much you have in them. And here we have some root pictures. They look like pretty healthy plant. Happy. Then the mendacious genera. I'm going to play more with these, especially Phalaenopsis, because it seems to me that the easiest ones to grow are the ones with the biggest roots. Cat is, I have tried Mandas because it just isn't bright enough up here unless you're under artificial light, and I do that too. But and they can let go completely dry in between. And I'm going to be doing some leaking with no water, just like I do with the Cattleyas. They do just fine. There's a happy plant with nice roots on the Brenneise. Here's somebody growing in lava rock. But you can see nice green, the velamen is green. That's a happy plant. It doesn't need to go dry because it's got plenty of air there. And Paphiopedilums and fragments quite well. They adjust fairly rapidly. And the frags, anyway, really don't want ever to dry out. Same with the Musnavalias and Miltoniopsis. I still wouldn't water. I wouldn't be converting in fall and or winter. So here we have several frags. It seems like effective, and they like the constant moisture. And here what happens when the top layer of the leaf is too dry, and for evaporation, reducing barrier. And as I said, you'll have the link to this. Rock wool can help. All of these things kind of can keep the top barrier, the medium. Now, once the roots have gone down into the pot, that's less critical. That's actually more about your repotting and going into a new pot. And here is the sheet of, we'll go through all of this, but basically in a disc and placing it at the base of the plant here in the medium. I've tried what they call semi-water culture because it much work. You basically soak the roots for a couple of days, then drain it off and let them dry out. For that. Full water culture I have done myself, but the people, the bottom quarter of the container is in water at all times and the roots grow. And you put some of the roots in there to start with, tips of them, and the rest of them are exposed to air, they're epiphytes, and it seems to work. As I said, I haven't done this myself, but I thought it was fair to include this because it is basically only water and air. Remember, those are the two elements. And there are variations on how they do this and how clean they try to keep it and the rest of that goes with that. I like pictures of things so you can see there's a little bit of water at the bottom and then mostly air. Now you do have there just a little bit of water in the bottom. Tips first, you bring up enough water for all of the plant. Either, I mean, if you're interested in trying, but these are good examples of it. And now comes the root pouring. Have orchids that look like that, but look at that. Water, that's just a mason jar. That's what it looks like. The rest of those roots are in air. Be interesting to play with. Now, I can see problems of trying to take this to a shop because things tend to spill. Actually, it can be a problem with the show too. But here somebody's even put extra water to the plant. Now, this is a very new idea actually, because one of the issues with growing this plant doesn't really have a perch, and it's somebody that used a sponge to help upright. This one is pretty far down in the container, so the actual cattleya there is just the pseudobulbs are basically keeping upright. Cymbidium too. So in the plant to be happy, the leaves are good. This one too. That new aerial root. I don't mind doing that because that's what they do in nature. A few down in the water to get the water, and the rest of it's grow where they want. We try to contain the orchid roots a little more than they really want to be contained. So it gives you a good idea of what happens with those. Even vandas. This one's not, of course, but that one looks like it. How do you stake it? Yeah, you have to be creative unless you use the sponge approach. And this one even has a fish to provide a little fertilizer. Not sure what you do with the roots that have lost the development, because the actual root side development, if it's still, it's worth keeping. Itself is dead, then you might as well cut it off. Well, now we're back. See, I stuck those slides in the wrong. So semi-hydro to actually full hydro. Water quality is always important. What do you do with the leca that stones do tend some roll around on the ground? So if you it's indoors, or may not like walk on rolling leca. So if you're not trying to do it in the living area. And transportation can be a problem. Keep up the holes in it. or at least the holes in the bottom. Put the thing on the top, make sure things don't out, just for the show. And then I think it's worth trying. I really haven't done this one, where you just layer the leek and rock wool in a well-draining pot with rock wool at the top. Water as the rock wool will be your water reservoir. Of course, love water. So that's basically the pest you're going to have to deal with. And here's a man that I've chatted with online. He'll make this, and he uses, which he gets at Costco or Lowe's, as ground cover. They're kind of light, so he mixes with gravel, so there's more weight. And these, hard to argue with that. I'm not sure I'm all that fond of how some of the plants look. I haven't seen the whole season, but you can see it does roots through the tires. It's a way to recycle old tires, I guess. And then there's Tony Wells, Let's Plants, and just the back. Cattleya in particular, but there's the main baskets, as you can see. Because what happens with the roots is they go, just go wherever they want to go. Orchid roots would like to do. Now the one on the left is one that I bought from you. It's my plant. And you can kind of see what's happening there, because I didn't hang. I didn't have a greenhouse at that point where that would really happen. But they're also going everywhere. And they will attach to the bench or the neighboring plant. That was to get a clay pot bigger. The hanging, the basket with leek, just let the clay pot kind of contain it. Now, eventually it's going to grow out or over the edge. Meantime, I've only had it for one season, by the idea that it will probably mostly just fill with root. It's dormant, semi-dormant right now. But that is the theory, and my theory on this one too is that this may never need to be repotted. It will just grow out of the pot, and you cut pieces. You don't actually have to replace the original material at all. First orchid I grew was from a friend of my father's, and it was a hugely overgrown Cattleya triana. It had over 35 blooms. You didn't even know that it had a pot anymore. So it just kind of shows what Cattleyas in particular like to do. And that's what it looks like in bloom. Flowers here. So first rays, another source for semi-hydroponic. Obviously, you can do an internet search, Google or whatever your search engine is. YouTube always. And an orchid room is good. I think she particularly does full water culture. And there are all kinds of Facebook pages. American Orchid Society, of course. Is that your plan on there, Jeff, today? And then they're for the so that's well, and that comes to the slides. I'm ready for.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? So Harvey is making this presentation available. so that you might want to take a screenshot, but we'll put it in the newsletter as well. The link that's down there
At the
will,
bottom.
yeah, at the bottom.
That's a pretty long list to type back.
Yeah. Awesome.
But
Harvey, if you could stop sharing your presentation, then it will allow me to go to the gallery view and we can see everybody.
I'm not sure your screen sharing. Stop share. This is the first time I've actually been on the.
So there you go. Now I can see everybody. Wow, there's a bunch of people here. Hi. So, does anybody have any questions?
So Harvey, this is Chris in California.
Yeah.
What do you do when you get? I've grown some hydroponically or some hydro also following Ray's plan. What do you do with algae that's set up on the inside of the pot? Do you just take everything out and clean the pot out with Clorox or something and then stuff it back in, or not worry about it?
I don't worry about it. It's not going to hurt the plant. It's more sense, if we want to call it that. Human sensibilities. Just don't care.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of semi-hydro. I used to really be into it. And Ron will probably remember this, but so I was president of the Tacoma Orchid Society so long ago that I'm not even sure I remember the dates. 2003 through 2006, something like that. But our previous president, Ron Bullock, his entire greenhouse, everything was in semi-hydro. He's the one that I learned this from, and he swore by semi-hydro, and he put everything in it, and everything did pretty well for him. So one of the things with the algae buildup that I would do is about once a month, I would mix some Fizan and kind of like leach the pot with a solution of Fizan, which kind of keeps the algae down. Otherwise, you end up with particularly if you have transparent pots, you're definitely going to end up growing a bunch of algae in there.
I use the white pots, so I don't have as much algae.
Yeah, and then then the whole beauty of this semi-hydro is, so I'm gonna use this as one of my wife's little props here. Does anybody remember this? So you're using a container does not have holes in the bottom. You put the holes in the side, and you really only need about 2 holes. So what's happening is that when you have all those rocks in here, that water runs through it, but it makes a little reservoir of water. And so you can basically water the dang thing pretty much every day, because all the water is going to go through those little holes, and it's just going to keep this little reservoir, and it wicks up. And if you notice some of those pictures on there where you could see the little pebbles in there, you can actually see the moisture in there. It's amazing how much they really like it. One of the things that I was concerned about was the dry winter rest that that we use for dendrobiums. And interestingly, because if you let it dry out and have no water in there, then you kind of mess up the whole ecology of the system. It's kind of once those pebbles totally dry out, you have to kind of soak them before they will retain water and kind of keep that moisture going like it was. So during the winter, that what is it from is it Halloween to Valentine's Day, something like that, where you don't with a dry winter rest where you supposedly don't water them, but if they're in this semi-hydro, you go ahead and water them. You just don't fertilize them.
You don't
because the whole
fertilize.
point of that is the dry part is keeping them so they don't go through active growth. Generally,
Yeah.
if you have orchids that require a dry winter rest and you go ahead and water them, they'll just make, instead of blooming, they'll make more foliage. And but if you keep the nutrients out of the semi-hydro, then it does kind of the same thing. You could actually achieve the same results as a dry winter rest, even though you've got water in there. It's just you don't have any nutrients in it. There is a video on our website. And if you look at our newsletter, kind of at the bottom of the newsletter, there's links for Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, where we have presence on those. And we actually have quite a bit of videos on YouTube. And I made a video about semi-hydro several years ago that's on there. And Ed has some excellent videos of his greenhouse, and he talks about the dry winter rest as well.
Yeah,
so semi-hydro is a
I learned something
really neat way to go.
Unexpected. In my first summer on Whidbey Island, I didn't have a greenhouse yet. So I had the Nobly dendrobiums just outside for the summer. It bloomed fall. My feeling on that is that the temperature was more important, even than the no fertilizer, to get to the bloom. Because as you probably know, if you lived in Tacoma and elsewhere, we get a lot of 50-degree nights, even in the summer.
Yeah.
So I was just astonished. Now I haven't done that since then because I'd rather have them in bloom for the spring show. But so temperature is, no fertilizer and make sure you lower the temperature some at night with the Noblies, and you won't get kikis rather than flowers. Otherwise, if you do it wrong, you're going to get lots of more plants.
Yeah.
Yeah, and interestingly, but the catasetums, I don't think you can water. You just have to let them go dry.
I think that's true. The other thing is with the what is that place? There's a hydroponic store in San Luis Obispo, and they sell that hydroton, and it comes in a 50-pound bag. It's $30 for, or at least it used to be. I haven't bought it in a few years because you buy a couple of bags and you're good to go for quite a while. But what I would do is take it, soak it, and rinse it really well. And if you use a TDS meter, you'll notice that if you just like put it in a big Rubbermaid, bucket, fill it with water, and take your total dissolved salts, it could be up to 450, 500, and so you have to keep rinsing it and soak it. So like I would soak it 24 hours, get rid of it, get rid of the water, take the TDS, and it's still kind of high, soak it again for another 24 hours, and then I would put some CalMag in the in what I soaked it in, and the CalMag soaks into those little pellets. And so there's a kind of a pre-treatment with it. But if you get this just right, I mean, the root growth is it's just absolutely amazing what, how plants will grow in this. I mean, it's just, it's phenomenal. And I used to get the pots, I would get those from Amazon, because you could buy those plastic, they're, like a quart cottage cheese container. And they're really cheap. They're like, you get a sleeve of them and, it's like $10 or something. I mean, they're really, really cheap. The problem is that when they sit in the sun for a couple of years, I actually have one out there and it has all those little pebbles in it. And I can't even pick it up. I think I was trying to pick the tag up out of it and it just cracked. And so it's kind of that thing, buy cheap, buy twice. So there's definitely a cheap way to go to buy those containers. But
I haven't had too much trouble with the
but it only lasts a few years because then they break down in the sunlight and then you have to repot again.
Well, of course, some of them aren't really designed to be in the sun, so you
Yeah,
don't worry about that. But actually, the ones
right.
that we got, not the ones I reused from the fridge, the ones I got from wherever I got them from, were food grade, and they stable.
Yeah.
So
And I've used all sorts of things. They're kind of fun, actually the other day I finished a jar of peanut butter. So I used, why throw this away? So, cleaned it out and drilled some holes in it, and I'm using an old peanut butter jar as a planter. Why not?
but Tony also, he's the one that doesn't have the water in it. He does most genera in that too, which is even easier because it's just the leca in a basket, other than having to manage the roots that go through the basket.
Yeah.
And I'll be playing with more genera with that approach. The Cattleyas do great. I wouldn't actually do them any other way anymore. Just leaf in a basket and then that inside a clay pot.
So have you noticed, and Ed, I'm kind of thinking of you, and I think you and Chris have both done this where you use the lava rock. Does lava rock basically work about the same way as the Leica?
Yeah, this is Ed here. Yeah, I found that the larger lava rock performs quite similar to the Leica. The problem I have is salt buildup. I did a little weight test, and it looks like the large black lava rock retains about 14% moisture when you soak it and then let it drain. So it's a good medium. There's a little bit of a jagged edges. So if you move the pot around or get any plant movement, you can damage the roots, where the Leica, being a round sphere, I think protects the roots even if there's a little bit of movement. And then for small seedlings, I've tried the small red lava rock. It's about a 1/4 inch. And Jeff, if you remember when we got the seedlings and the plugs
Yeah.
from Hawaii, the ones in bark did so much better than the small lava rock. I think the pore size there is just too small and it packs a little too densely. So I'd recommend an air vol block on the Tank Farm Road. You can go bring a bucket or your pickup truck, and they'll sell you a 5-gallon bucket for a few bucks. So it's a very economical way to do semi-hydroponics.
Yeah.
And
I use those like on my cymbidiums. So I'll pot my cymbidiums, and particularly since sometimes bark is at a premium, it's hard to always keep a supply of bark. And so I kind of think of my bark as, like making meatloaf. And so, put perlite in it, which is, not always my favorite thing. But I'll put the Leica in with the bark, and sometimes some charcoal, and so I kind of perk up my cymbidium mix. And I think it helps because it kind of expands my mix. So if I don't use as much bark, when you repot some of these huge cymbidiums, you really can go through a lot of bark on them. So it's kind of nice to put some of these rocks in there to
why don't you just
beef
try
up
rural?
the media a bit.
I don't think you need the bark at all for cymbidium. Possibly use a regular pot because it'll stay better, but
I actually have a cymbidium that's doing really well that I did not pot. I stuck it in a pot, but I didn't put anything in it, and it's blooming just fine. So
remember, it's humidity at the roots that they want. We get obsessed with the media, and that's not
yeah,
what we're interested in.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
sold my one cymbidium from my old greenhouse. Now my new greenhouse has got plenty of room, so I'm gonna want to get a few. But I think it's just a Leica and a regular pot. That's all. And I saw it at the show, and it was great.
Does anybody else have any questions for Harvey while we have him? Julie.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Judy?
Hi, Judy.
Hi.
It's good to see you.
Looking at that Leica, you know, and I'm looking at different things on my computer screen. Is that different than the lava rock, those pebble brown things that we've been using?
Yeah, it's a manufactured product. It is not a natural product.
Can't hear.
Yeah, it's a ceramic pellet. It's manufactured, and I think it's similar to the lava rock, but not, you know, not exactly the same. Ed would probably understand the chemistry of it a little bit more. That's kind of why I was thinking that maybe they were equivalent, but I don't think they are equivalent.
Well,
I think the hydrogen, the Leica is even, you know, more porous, and a lot of it has to do too with getting all those salts out of it, which, you know, tend to build up after a while. So you know, one of the things that Ray Barklow recommends is that you fertilize every time you water, and particularly like with doing the semi-hydro, that the solution in there is you know, it's got fertilizer in the solution, so it will tend to end up accumulating the salts in there. And so at least, you know, once a month you have to, you know, really you know, flush the salts out of there to make sure it doesn't become kind of toxic to your plants.
So the lava rock, the round ones, the Leica, and then these clay pellets that I'm seeing, those are all different.
The Leica is the little clay pellets.
Yeah, that he was just talking about.
Yeah, and lava rock is a little bit different. I don't know, Ed, can you add to this?
Yeah, the lava rock, Judy, is actually volcanic basalt that, you know, it's lava, but it's a very gassy form. And Airvol gets the product that's crushed and sieved, and they're about 3/4 of an inch average diameter. And it looks like, if you're familiar with Coke, or just a bubbly kind of rock that is solidified and hard with hard edges. It's black, and it's used in a lot of landscaping applications. You'll see it used in some barbecues and gas grills, gas fireplaces, where they just need a medium to put in, and then gas flows through it. So it's volcanic rock. The Leica product, as I understand it, don't quote me on this, I think originally they took old bricks, they ground them up and tumbled them, and the Leica material is actually the same material as a clay brick that's been fired, and they were just thrown in tumblers, tumbled, and you got these little round balls from broken up bricks.
Yeah, see, like this average thing here, it says clay pebbles, great for hydroponics, aquaponics, water absorption, eco-friendly, and breathable.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
like
it.
That's it. Yeah, and you know, I do have to kind of give you a slight warning with them. I always loved using them. The problem is I tend to, you know, I'm always having a constant battle with gravity, and I tend to drop things. And so these are like, so just think of dropping little marbles on the floor, and just be warned if you're gonna try it, that, you know, might be a consideration if you've got the dropsies, because, you know, I tend to drop them, and then, you know, I'm stepping on them, and particularly if I'm barefoot, it's not very fun. But you know, if you're you know, if you don't tend to have that problem as much as I do, then they're kind of you know, I kind of think they're really worth exploring. I got a geez, maybe 5 years ago, I bought a flask of Lely Anceps from Carter and Holmes, and I planted it in Leica, and the roots on the thing are just absolutely incredible. I mean, it's phenomenal to me how much root growth, and it's kind of neat to see it. Which, you know, when you plant it in a black pot or a ceramic pot or whatever, you don't necessarily always see those roots. And it is one of the nice things with, you know, doing the semi-hydro in some kind of container that you can see through, because you can see all of the roots growing. And it's just amazing how much that they seem to love this, you know, this environment.
Hey, Jeff and Harvey, I just want to give a little recognition. Julie Walter was the person who came to me 10 years ago at a 5 cities meeting and said, there's these little round clay pellets. You really need to look at these things. And I've planted most of my cattleyas in them, and they've done very, very well. So kudos to Julie for spotting this stuff 10 years ago when it was virtually unheard of in the industry.
She was using the Leica.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I still do. I don't have anything in bark. My cymbidiums outside I do, but not.
You're
and
not
I believe
using the,
Julie gets credit for this too.
Yeah,
That I was told that you about 10 years ago told everybody about these.
yeah, I brought a couple of plants with them.
These are so amazing. Absolutely love this. They actually have a sale on these now. I found the website, and I'll put this in the newsletter next month. And they have a sale on the large ones on these. I just was in contact with the owner of that company tonight, and so they have a sale going on. So I think I'm going to get a few more.
They're good. They're really good for cool growing plants because they do. The water does evaporate through them. I wouldn't put brasvolas in it or anything warm growing because they do tend to be very cooling to the roots.
What is that?
It's a ceramic tube. It's like a big
called,
tall vase.
Cool tubes.
Cool log.
Cool logs. That's right. Cool logs.
Do you have a bottom?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's
right.
It's solid here, but it's hollow here. So you just mount your plant on it, and you fill this with water, and your fertilizer can go in here. So it's full of water the whole time. So
frogs love them.
It cuts down on having to, you know, water them all the time.
You know, you guys have been in this a lot longer than I have. But
What would happen if you just put it in the top of the tube with some water in the bottom and just let the tube itself suck the water up?
Yeah.
Let the tube be the medium.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ron.
I've seen hydro, which was done excellent. Semi-hydro that was done the same way. I've seen people grow their orchids all in miracle grow, and they had terrific plants and flowers in that. And I've seen them where they grew it only in bark. They had nothing else added to it.
Yeah.
Our one close friend in Seattle came from Florida now, and he's up here, Matt Godlove, and he waters every day. Every day. And some people like me, I'm right here in Washington now in about 10 days. In 10 days, the way I grow. It is amazing. Everybody does it the way they learn that they can grow. And it's amazing. Everybody seems to do it a different way, but they do it great.
Yes, and it also depends on your climate greatly as to what the watering needs of your plant will be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Judy, if you're up in Arroyo Grande, you can go to just down towards the oceans from the old Fair Oaks Theater. There's a Sweet Harvest hydroponic store. I'm pretty sure that they have the Hydroton type like a product there. And in theory, Ed set up a year or so ago that 5 cities members get a discount.
Oh, cool.
The amount is going to vary depending on how much you know, that they were able to buy it for over what they're selling it for. So when I talked to him, he says, well, I can't tell you it's 5% or 10% or whatever. He says, it's going to vary on every product. So if you go in there to buy stuff, you know, tell them you're a 5 Cities member and you understand that there's a discount for 5 Cities members.
Cool. That's
And
good to know.
What place was that?
It's called Sweet Harvest. If you're at the Fair Oaks Theater, just start driving towards the ocean, and there's like a auto parts place next door to them. And then just soon thereafter, there's like a little strip mall, and you'll see Sweet Harvest. They're like more or less in the middle of like 4 buildings. I don't remember their address.
They were at our thing that we had up at well, yeah, they were also,
They were there at the Botanical Gardens last year. That's correct.
yeah.
Yeah, Chris, the address is 1041 East Grand, and that's in Arroyo Grande.